Hi, this is Abdallah Sabry. I'm a fashion and portrait photographer and I'm a Sony Alpha ambassador. Today we have Alpha discussion about fashion photography with Kegham. He's the art director and image maker. So can you tell us about yourself a little bit more, what you do in life and how you started getting in the fashion industry?
Sure. So as you said, as you introduced me, I'm an art director and an image maker in fashion. And I'm a professor of image design and fashion photography and fashion studies at Paris College of Art and the French Institute of Fashion. My background is in fine arts, very much like yourself.
Yeah.
And
We all started there.
We all started there. And about 11 years ago or 12 years ago, was it? I was approached by a fashion photographer to style his shoot. And so it took off from there. It wasn't a career choice per se. It was just, let's try something. I'm a visual artist, and it was a good start. It was love at first sight, and I decided to go more into it. And 6 months later, I was doing a shoot for Kenzo. So it was beginner's luck. And then I went more, and then I went to study more about fashion and image making and photography. And that's what I do right now.
So what do you think, if we're going to talk about like fashion photography, what is fashion photography for you? Generically, what's the features that you look at and how the history and where it's now, and how you can see also like the progress in the Middle East or actually Egypt and Africa.
Well, if we're gonna go a bit historical and a bit like generic about what fashion photography is, right? So photography is invented in mid-19th century, and really very shortly after that, it was adopted by fashion designers because it was the perfect solution for them to disseminate their work. So what did photography do for fashion designers or fashion industry back then? Basically, photography could translate the 3D, the three-dimensionality of a garment, which is by default is a flat. And so what fashion photographers did is basically document the garment on a body. So as simple as this, and capture certain gestures of the garment on a body.
As a movement, you mean like how the model or the person can move in the dress?
Exactly, and that's why if you go back in time in old fashion photography, and when I say old, I don't mean necessarily 60s, but well, 60s and some, but,
relatively
20s, you see certain very specific pauses for fashion photography. You know, like it's almost like captured in.
It's like a mannequin, very stiff.
Very stiff, but in the middle of a motion. You know, when they walked, even when they walk like this, it's just to show how the dress is falling, is draping on the body.
And you could see this also in the runways, the old runways, how the models used to move and how the runway setup was very it has dynamic, it has movement, but it's very direct and very, not like, I wouldn't call it like stiff, but it has this structure to it. I would call it structure.
Absolutely. Yeah, there were very specific ways of walking. I mean, even in Egyptian old défilés or fashion shows, you could see that. It's a bit, now looking at it, it's a bit funny. But that's how they felt it was most practical to show a dress, to show a garment. Now, just this simple fact, really, there was a revolution in the fashion industry because designers could spread their work and communicate their work much faster and to a wider audience.
Through photography?
Through photography. And before that, what was it?
I think it was illustrations. Like
it was illustrations.
Like the first Vogue, first few Vogue issues was actually illustrated.
Illustrated, of course. That was also 19th century, late 19th century. But slowly they introduced more and more photographs, and covers were photographs. There were no longer illustrations. But even before that, even dressmakers used to make miniature models, like dolls, of their, and dress them with their garments, and send them. Yeah, and they would you know how costly that was, and they would send them to.
It's even harder than a normal
way
size
harder
dress.
It's like this, and they make, for instance, 5 and send them to their key clients all over. Not all over.
As
I mean, they would be as a sample of this is our collection, sort of like a catalog that you send or used to send to major clients. Now everything is online, so you don't necessarily need to.
Now you can do a lookbook.
Lookbook, and you don't need to print it.
It's
out
the front,
there.
the side, and the back. And
exactly.
So, what do you think, as a fashion photography, actually kind of became out there, and has it this kind of revolution?
I think it there was. It went very fast. It went very fast because as early as the 20s, you had artists like Man Ray, who's a surreal artist and later on Dadaist artist, who was also a photographer and a very good one. He started experimenting with fashion photography. And just gave it a big sense of his work, of his, surrealist aesthetics and sensibilities. And then you had, in the 40s, you have Studio Blumenfield and Erwin Blumenfield in the US, again playing not only with capturing garments on a model, but took it further
a bit more photography.
And photography, but also experimentation with editing, with post-production. Obviously, we're not talking about Photoshop. We're talking about really playing with the dark room, playing with the negatives, etc. And the medium became, like a piece of dough that you can, in fact, there is no rule for it. And then you have, obviously, like for most of us working in fashion, the father of fashion photography in a way is Richard Avedon.
Yeah, of course.
And you would see Richard Avedon, for instance, a few of his photos, those that he captured Dior's new look in Paris. For so many, this is the emblem of fashion photography.
Yeah, Richard Avedon was one of the photographers that he would spend like 30 minutes to just put it right, like to make sure that the model here aligned with the other model here. Like he was kind of photographer, and he used to shoot in large format and medium format. And he I watched like this documentary that they would, even the models, they interviewed the models and they were talking. He spent like a long time just to take one shot. He was one of this kind of photographer that he wouldn't let it go.
Right.
He wouldn't compromise. He wouldn't he just has to make it perfectly. And it's a large format. It's the risk of like damaging the picture or actually getting it right and shooting it without actually, like not like now in the digital you see the results. If it's not okay, we shoot it right away. The guy had like 10 shots in medium formats, maybe 1 shot or 2 shots in large format, and you have to make it really perfect. And that's why I think Richard Avedon is one of the people actually made a huge shift and made actually fashion photography not just a documentation, it became an art on its own. Kind of became like forefront. And that's when the era, that's when the photographers were actually almost like rock stars, or like Peter Lemberg or these people, like their name became so big, even sometimes bigger than the magazines itself,
Right. But that's even, I mean, with Peter Lemberg, it was a bit after. But I mean, for instance, a photo you were talking about, everything taking so long to make a shot perfect before even attempting to shoot. I'm sure you know this very famous photo of Dovima with elephants. Of Avedon. It was in the 50s, probably 56.
Was Chanel, I think? Was Chanel?
No, Dior.
Dior. Dior.
And it was Dior. It was a dress Dior designed by Yves Saint Laurent. So again, this was for Harper's Bazaar, I believe. Of course, to set this with the elephants. I mean, I can only imagine having the elephants parallel and the motion is perfectly right, and then you have the silhouette of Dovima. That's an image for me. It's like equals. This is, if you ask anyone.
It's worse to spend the whole day to take just one
shot
like this. It's hard. It takes a lot of strong will and persistence.
Right.
But it's end of the day, if you got it right, it became an iconic shot.
Right. And it is, and that's what I mean. It's really iconic. Anyone would associate fashion photography with this photo. No matter what your aesthetics are necessarily. But going back to what fashion photography is today, or has been in the last few decades, I think fashion photography is way beyond just documenting garments. I mean, if we look at fashion, fashion is a fashion system. There's a system to it, right? There is like conception, there is production, and there is diffusion. And image makers or communicators, we are in the third phase, which is very much could be in relation to the other two, but we're in the third phase. We're delivering
the image to the people.
We're delivering the product to
in a way, how it should be seen.
Storytelling of the product to the people. We're not just documenting it. And obviously, there is documentation, literal documentation, which is sort of a lookbook, catalog of the garment, which now could be done through video or photography. But more importantly than that, this is important because of e-commerce.
And make me interested to ask you about, like, when we tapped in this point, like how you can put fashion photography, if we, let's say, if we're gonna put it in departments, or kind of like, let's say, like there is an editorial fashion photography, but there is a lookbook fashion photography, and there is fashion films, and there is like,
so in the categories basically of
can you share with us, like, what's kind of like slightly what's the difference between an editorial and lookbook? Because this is something, and personally I struggle with clients. You know, client will tell me like, okay, I want to shoot a catalog, but we want to have like amazing setup. It's like, no, catalog, it's minimal as it's possible for the product we only show. But if we're gonna do a setup and we're gonna have to make a concept, this is more like kind of editorial, which is referred to the editorial from the magazines. It's more about the storytelling than it's kind of about the product.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, there are now basically, classically, you've got three directions. You've got lookbook / catalog. You've got editorial photography, and you've got campaign photography.
Okay.
Right. So. Lookbook is basically here's a collection. We're making a lookbook, and it, as you said, it's about the product. Product comes first.
Sharp, in focus, colors are right.
Campaign is giving the storytelling of the collection. Giving, campaign. If you look at even the big fashion houses, a campaign is maximum 6 photos. It doesn't need. It's just
this is another thing that a lot of photographers actually in my workshops, they ask me this, like, how many pictures should I give? And it's like, I ask them, what kind of shoot you doing?
What kind of shoot, and what do you agree? What does your client want?
If it's a lookbook, you might give like 30 shots. But if it's editorial, I usually tell them like 8 to 12 shots.
Well, so going back to editorial, literally it means related to a publication and a magazine. So that's when we say editorial or
it's
editorial
like
but it's not even a lingo. Editorial literally means to write an editorial for a magazine is writing an article for a magazine. So editorial photography is basically photography for magazines, whether it's print or online, or it could be even social media accounts, sort of.
But if the shoot is not gonna go to be published, can we still call it editorial as an expression of this direction of photography?
I guess we can. We can
so
also call it test shoot.
So we can separate it from the lookbook and the campaign.
I wanted to just add something about lookbook and campaign, because a lot of smaller brands, when I say smaller, it doesn't mean they're less starting, or even just they could be in the market for 20 years. They're just not huge in business size. Many do a mix of campaign / lookbook, meaning I do not want to have a simple catalog in a studio with a backdrop. I actually want art direction. I want to transmit the storytelling of my collection in a format of a lookbook. Meaning to fuse both campaign and lookbook, because I don't have the budget to have a shoot for a lookbook.
This is kind of similar to what's happening nowadays in actually social media content. like the social media campaigns, it's pretty much nowadays is like this. It's not a big budget, so there's not a huge setup, but yet it's not like completely lookbook, white background.
Yeah.
It has a setup in it.
Exactly. So actually, the fourth category that we can have today is content for social media, which took on its own form. Yeah. Because it's everything. It could be whatever you want.
You have to be creative, but there's not much budget.
No, I mean, it's everything. It could be a catalog format, it could be campaign format, it could be just as simple as if you're taking just a page out of an editorial, or it really can be anything, and it depends on the client and what they want to articulate at that moment of time. But yeah, as you were saying, when your client comes and say, we want a setup and we want a scenography and we want this and that, and then you say, no, but this is a catalog, product should come first, and you know, everything should be neat. In fact, I usually in my lectures I actually have just a PDF.
All day.
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, it's just 20 minutes. It's just a little presentation about the difference between lookbook versus campaign, because sometimes it does fuse. It does become one, because
it's very confusing. I struggle with it with the clients mainly. Sometimes with actually agencies, and for me it's kind of like they don't kind of know what exactly they're asking for. They want to have everything in one shoot, in one day, and shoot it, which is, for me as a photographer, is not me giving them more pictures or giving them content or whatever it is. For me, I need to know what I'm gonna just focus on, because when I shoot an editorial, or I kind of look at, and I adjust the focus and the eye autofocus in the camera on the model eye, because that's where the story. She's taking me through this journey of emotions throughout the whole story. But the lookbook, I don't put the focus at all on the model's face. I always adjust the focus, my center on the product itself. It's in focus. Yes, the picture is we're shooting in flash and it's crisp and it's all sharp. Of course, depth of field is very deep. But it's still
the product is king.
This is my focal point. It's the product. It's not the model face. And actually, the model face shouldn't take much over in a lookbook than the product. You shouldn't be distracted, because again, it's a catalog. But once you turn the page and you look, your eye has to go directly to the product. When actually in editorial, when you turn the page, you get fulfilled with a story, a feeling, at something. Something tells you that kind of make you look at it and try to look in the details. Yes, you look now, later on you look at the dress, and so it's all the story of how I'm gonna set up the lighting is completely different from lookbook and editorial or campaign. Like I usually see, like in editorial and campaign, I can go dramatic. The product doesn't have to be well lit, but it just, I can give the silhouette of the
product does not have to be there either. I mean, there are campaigns like Bulgari. I remember a few years ago, the high jewelry brand, they actually had billboards, a whole campaign. The product is not there, literally is not there. Jewelry is not there. It was Kirsten Dunst, I think, was the face of that campaign. And so it was just about articulating the mood of the collection and what it's standing for with no product. And that's a campaign that with a huge logo of Bulgari. In editorial as well, you're allowed not, unless it's an advertorial where the brand is paying you or is sponsoring the shoot, then you must include the product, of course. But in fact, editorial, a lot of times, you may just show the color of a shirt. All you need to do is to write the credit of the garment, and we're good. You don't. We're not. You don't owe the brand to show it fully
the product.
Of course, some brands contact magazines and say, we don't like the way you portrayed us, so we're not gonna lend you again. So obviously you've got these politics, but by the book, no, you don't have a responsibility.
As a fashion photography and as a fashion photographer, you don't owe the brand to.
It's not the point of this. I mean, editorial is about
if you
giving
can make
the
it
story.
within your art and the image making, then you did great. If not, and it didn't take out, it's fine.
But that's going back to what fashion photography is today. I think we cannot define it anymore it's relation. If you look at some fashion films right now, fashion is, I'm trying to say fashion, garments are secondary.
Yeah.
It's there is a term that I really like, vampirism. The founder of Purple magazine, Olivier Zam, once he wrote an article about the changing reality of fashion photography, and he borrowed this term vampirism, like being a vampire, saying that fashion photographers and image makers are like vampires. They feed off other fields, not fashion. And he was saying it in a negative association, but I thought it's actually amazing, because
if you look at it, fashion is a form of art, photography is a form of art, and then you have the fashion photography. It's actually a mash of so many forms.
Yeah, but art. I mean, I don't see why we can't have documentary formats for fashion shoots. I don't see why. That's what he meant by, feeding off other fields, feeding off cinema, filmmaking,
art movement in general,
or other field, basically on sociology, feeding off. I'm getting my references from a reading from a book that I got. You're feeding off literature. You're feeding off. There is no self-referential sort of rules to what fashion photography is, and I think today, globally, I don't think any clients, any big
define, you can't put it in a
or
box.
any big fashion house is looking for the typical fashion photo, because we're bored. We are so bored. We want, and that's why they're hiring visual artists who are not photographers to do their campaigns. And I'm talking Dior, Louis Vuitton.
I was going to ask you next, actually, about like what is the definition of image making?
To be honest, I don't think there is just
what
definition.
The image maker can do, or the
image maker is going beyond. Yes, exactly. Image maker is going beyond the very specific medium, in my opinion. Image making is. I call myself an image maker. I photograph many of my shoots, not all of them, but I would not introduce myself as a photographer.
Okay.
I think for reasons we talked about before, but I see myself as an art director and image maker, because what comes first to me is the story or the structure or the concept of the photo shoot that I'm doing, the photo shoot or the session. Let's put it even in video. What am I trying? It's exactly like approaching a project. For me, each shoot is a project. Sometimes with a client, sometimes it's independent and personal, and sometimes it's for a magazine. So it's orchestrating. The way I see it is I orchestrate an orchestra. I am the maestro, the leader of an orchestra, and trying to put it all together. I'm not necessarily not good at playing the violin.
You practice photography, but you're not photographer, so you know what photography it is, and you can, even if you're not shooting yourself and you having a photographer, you cannot know how to talk to the photographer, and you do art direction, but you have a great background in styling, so you know how to talk this. This kind of, I feel like you have to kind of do everybody's job.
Yes.
Before you actually start
directing,
and when you direct, and you did hair before, and you did makeup before, and you did styling, and you did photography, and you did video. Now, if you're directing, you cannot know how to deliver what you see in your head as an image. And you know actually what's possible and what's not, because that's sometimes we face as a photographers with a creative director or a director. They have amazing background. They're so artistic, but they never actually hold the camera themselves, and they have the visual, which is amazing, but it's not applicable in this circumstances. Like I can see what he's talking about or what she's talking about, but this is not applicable, because the lens range is 35 millimeter, and now we're talking about a fish eye perspective, which is not there. That should be
foreseen.
been said before.
Right.
If he's familiar, if he hold the camera before, and he would say like, please don't forget to bring a fisheye.
Right.
You know, or actually
give you a reference.
A mood board.
Well, a mood board. I think that's about this.
Yeah.
About this point, I think photographers should make mood boards. It's
Yeah,
not only stylists or art directors.
I do actually. I try.
I
do most of my shoots.
My students.
Yeah.
Force them to, because it's so obsolete for photographers to come. It's so for me it's like passé for a photographer to come to his or her shoot
to execute.
That's a technician. And that's a technician, and that's not an image maker.
Yeah.
That's why I was gonna say, because you were asking me about the definition of image maker. Honestly, a makeup artist is an image maker if the makeup artist approaches it as image making and not specifically not specifically sort of dealing with, okay, I've got a reference and I'm just gonna apply this reference. And I think photographers today, fashion photographers, should not approach project this way. And I think I started photographing my shoots, even though I used to photograph fine art photography before, but I started photographing my fashion shoots because of that. Because in many cases I felt like it was not a collaboration. It was me doing the work and a technician coming and trying to execute my vision.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not saying photographers are like this. I think many are falling into this.
You have a vision in this shoot. You have an input as a photographer in this shoot, or you're just coming to press the shutter. Because if it's only this, it's a matter of a couple months you practice photography and you can do it yourself, you know.
And I keep saying to my photographer, anyone in my team, like yesterday I had a shoot, guys, I'm working with you not for you to execute just my vision. I'm working with you to give me your vision on
within this direction.
Exactly. Add to it.
Yeah.
If we can actually take it a notch to the right, because you suggested something amazing. Let's do that.
Just take us to the next point. Like, would you actually prefer a flexible photographer or a very strict one?
Very flexible.
Yeah.
I think, very flexible. So I say it, but I'm very strict. So I'm very strict, but I guess flexibility is openness. That's what I mean by flexibility. Openness to accidents. Openness to improvisation. To experimentation.
Sometimes the spot doesn't work. You're on set, and what you gonna do?
True.
Are you gonna freeze? You can freeze the shoot and lose like 2 hours till the other spot arrive, or you actually improvise and make something out of the place.
And I think even outside the circumstances, I prefer that. I mean, personally, I keep trying to push myself towards. Out of my comfort zone, not towards my comfort, out of my comfort zone. And I think I think this is some kind of flexibility. Because having your way, having your pattern or your methodology of this is how I do it, this is how it's done, this is how Kegham is gonna do it. No, I mean, it's just, I think it doesn't, it's limiting. It's limiting for potential, for one's potential, for an artist's potential. And being strict, I think it's important to be strict with yourself, but that's discipline, that's something else. But I'm talking about rules or what is right and what is wrong in painting, in photography. I belong to the school. It is a matter of taste. Obviously, there's no right or wrong.
This is when conflict happens sometimes. And that's what I actually like. I've been doing fashion photography for like a decade now, and most of my life, or actually all the career that I have, I would be actually mentioned as a flexible photographer. I don't actually make a problem or conflict or stop something, but yet there is some kind of points that I know if I actually compromise in this one, it's gonna affect the quality.
Sure.
And that's when I actually not become strict, but okay, I'm okay to change this, I'm okay with the timing, I'm okay with this and this and that, as far we having this result. And this result, it's what I keep my eyes, that's what I'm strict with, like I'm flexible in whatever the variables is gonna change, because yes, the timing like this, so we can shoot less in this time, but we make it up in something else. But there's points that actually when our director or a stylist or a client actually try to force it on me, that's when I kind of have to like say no. And it's not being saying no because like I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, but that's not flexibility. That's that's another story.
Yeah, but that's when
that's
I
compromising.
Say, yeah, exactly. You
that's
know,
not flexibility, of course.
That's when it's actually gonna affect. And end of the day, I'm the one who's gonna deliver.
Right.
So if I actually said yes now, it's gonna backfire in my face. You know, like when I'm delivering.
It's like you don't want to put your name on something.
Yeah, you're not convinced about.
You're not convinced about. Of course, no, that's not flexibility. I don't mean that kind of flexibility. I mean flexibility in aesthetics.
Yeah.
Flexibility in embracing things that where you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Out of choice and not just out of the circumstances force it on me.
Yeah.
But I think you were asking me about
the flexible, but yeah, I think we covered the flexible and the strict photography and what you prefer. I definitely said like loud and clear.
Flexible
all the
even
way.
though I'm asked about ask all my crew and all the people I work with. I'm very strict about certain things and about methodology.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual shoot, in terms of the actual, not only during the shoot, but in my fashion image making, I try to be as flexible as possible. I dread sticking to one style and going, just continuing with it, and limiting myself to even experiment or or be flexible about new things.
We talked about flexible photography and a strict one, and you said right away you actually would go for a flexible photographer, and why. So that made me actually want to ask you a question about like which one comes first, or which one is more important for a young starting photographer? Is it aesthetic or technique?
So I think definitely both. No, I don't think both complement each other for sure. And technique is a way of going towards your aesthetics, is the way to realize the aesthetics that you intend to have in a photo or in a project.
Kind of helps you to reach
exactly. It's a medium.
And
it's a facilitator. Now, if a student of mine asks me what should I work on first, aesthetics or technique, I would definitely go for aesthetics. Because again, like we're saying, a fashion photographer, let's be specific because you were talking about fashion photography. A fashion photographer is not a technician. I mean, is a technician, but it's not.
He has a technique, but he's an artist.
But he's an art. He's an image maker, right? You have a vision, you have a style, you're not just there to know what are the right lights to put to show the garment and that's it, and what shutter speed and what it's bigger than that. And
it has to have an input. And you think the input comes from the aesthetic.
And the aesthetics. And also the thing is, so how do you get the aesthetics, right? It's not like I'm gonna go to the aesthetics university and get a degree in aesthetics, or go to the aesthetics shop and buy it. It's exposure. You just need to have the curiosity and the will to just expose yourself to all kinds of visuals, not only in fashion, but all kinds of, literature included. To have a radar, your radar on, just your radar on.
You feed on art.
Yes, exactly.
So you can develop the aesthetic.
It's like you're soaking in everything, so you can, and putting it in your baggage. Of aesthetics, I call it a visual encyclopedia. Because the way we process, I mean, we're really bombarded with insane amount of photos a day with Instagram, with all social media, Pinterest, but constantly the first thing most people, people in my circle at least, do in the morning is just to go scroll through their Instagram. So we process images differently, and obviously it's good because our visual literacy compared to 10 years ago is higher. But at the same time, we don't give images or visuals the right attention. We don't get out of them what we should get out of them. And trying to go for a visual library means that you actually need to look and not just see through. Look.
You watch, you don't like just like glance.
Yes, you don't exactly. You need to focus on it. You need to understand what are you.
You think like the aesthetics come from like kind of subconscious point, or it's conscious that I want to make it this way?
Well, it's both. There is something called talent as well, you know, and sensibility. So this is something you don't necessarily acquire per se, but you definitely can shine it.
Because personally, it kind of always bothered me in my head. It's when you look at art, it's a taste. There's no right or wrong. And taste, it doesn't have 1, 2, 3, 4. You can say like that's beautiful or that's ugly, you know. So it's always kind of this liquid place that it doesn't have a rule. It doesn't have corners. It doesn't have a shape.
Right.
And that's when you look at someone work and you fall in love with it. Although like technicality or lighting is vulgar, it's in your face, it's disturbing, and some other people you don't like them, and the one next to you, the picture you didn't like, they loved it. It's that's why it made me question about like where it's coming from. It's coming whether it's culture, background, subconscious. I feel like it's kind of combo of like what you've been listening, watching, smelling, and doing all your life since you were a kid, and it's like it boil in one thing, and that's your taste, and that's what kind of always struggling with, because as a photographer, I always want to tap in how I can reach people, you know. That's why I'm interested to know like how people taste photography or anything in life, why people like my pictures actually. I don't actually know, like it's not about like why people doesn't like my picture, I why you like my picture. And when you ask someone this question, they don't have an answer. They say like I just like it, you know. It's a very interesting point. That needs a whole discussion, you know, like to go through. But it's just like I'm bringing up something that make people like question, you know. And I would love to hear like how you see it, where it's coming from. Is it something built in nature, or it's something we consciously get educated to reach?
I think it's both. I mean, I'm not getting one thing. Are you saying reception, or are you saying give? Because you talked about people liking work or people making work. So that's, I think it's a different point.
Yeah, like
I mean, taste in general, of course, it's the same.
That's what I'm talking. Like, if you make something, you make something that you like most of the time. You know, like if you
sometimes you don't just you do it out of
and
making
that's
a living.
clear. That's a clear. That's out of the window. You don't need to. We all do this, and it's fine. It's to pay the bills, you know.
Right.
But I'm talking about like the thing that you do and as an art that you love doing it. You lose yourself in it, and how these things and why these things reach some other people and it resonate with them. You know, like it's this kind of. I can't figure it out. I never figured it out. Nobody can actually really kind of figure it out.
Taste.
But I was kind of looking at it. Is it culture? Is it is it education? Or it's just something that resonates with people as a nature?
That as well, you know. I don't know if you've heard of Roland Barthes, who's a French philosopher and critical writer, and he had this book called Camera Lucida about photography, or more on the sort of critical thinking and philosophy of photography, and he was saying how a photo sometimes there is the how it just punctures you with no reason. A photo just goes through you and you don't understand why, and it's not because it's an amazing photographer who took it, but that just touches a string in you. And sometimes it's because they're holding a birthday cake, and this is my dad, and this is my sister, and stuff. So it touches you because of the elements in the photo. And sometimes it's not the elements in the photo. The whole, the alchemy of that flat image is just hitting somewhere. And so I don't think there is you know, sometimes you relate to something because I grew up in Egypt, so when I see the pyramids, I would relate to the pyramid, to Egypt in a way if I see it in France. But yeah, like you said, it's both. It's something innate, so given, and it's also culture about specificities of each person, I guess.
And would you call like this kind of communication that comes from the aesthetic more? That if a photographer has certain kind of aesthetic, that's how it can reach certain people and resonate with.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And I don't. Yeah, it's just. I think technique is easy to get. Technique.
It's a practice.
There are steps for it.
Yeah.
I think what is not that easy to get is style and is a personal trait and is understanding what is my creative universe and what is good work for me, good work that I aspire to produce. Yeah, exactly. And that is not easy, and that takes experimentation, but that takes a lot of curiosity. Of course, takes time.
It takes a lot of time, actually. It took me a few years to reach what I actually call, like, to the people in workshops, I call, like, find your signature, find your fingerprint, you know. The moment that you reach this level, that you make a picture and you don't put your name on it, and people realize that you took this picture, you're good. Start developing this, because that's now you just pinpointed your vision and your voice and your identity in this kind of aesthetic. And that's not just it. That needs a lot of developing. You know, to get mature. It's like a baby. You have to also practice it. You have to feed it, and you have to nurture it to become this kind of full potential of this kind of signature. Which is, I wanna actually ask you a very good question, and you are one of the most people who can actually only answer this question. How important for a photographer to get involved in the final layout of a campaign or editorial or a lookbook? How because photographer usually they deliver the picture and they walk away.
Goodness, yes, that is. I think every photographer should be very much concerned about the layout of their photos, because sometimes very bad photos for an editorial can make an excellent editorial because of a genius editorial designer.
Yeah.
Really,
he put it
and I've seen it. And sort of like redoing the art direction of the shoots, recropping, playing around to make it into something visually very visually strong, you know, like. And I've seen amazing photos, like works of art. I'm talking about
on
even personal experience, you know. Yeah, just put it on a wall and it's there. It doesn't need more. They were absolutely ruined from bad layout. So I think it's for the best of the photographer to actually expose him or herself to what is graphic layout for my photos, and to have a say in it. I know magazines are not very cooperative in that, but I think lately they've been open for suggestions. In many cases, I tell my students, myself, what I do is when I deliver photos, I deliver a PDF of the layout as well.
With the pictures. That's
and
how I see it
small
together.
PDF, and that's how I see it. That's my. And sometimes I actually put it as a rule with certain magazines. I am the one making my layout. Because it's part of my shoot. My layout is my story, my visual storytelling.
It's complete package.
Exactly. It's exactly. And it just really changes. It absolutely changes the whole concept, the whole story. If the way you're pairing and juxtaposing photos.
How far the picture from each other, how close overlapping.
What is put with what? How is this image communicate? Exactly. How are they communicating together?
Because sometimes, like, you shoot during the whole day shoot, you don't shoot in sequence. You know, like so when you deliver the picture according to the name of the files, they don't receive it in the right order. And then it's a matter of whatever we're gonna put the design, which is most of the time wasn't actually on set. He was or she was at the office. Didn't hear about it. They never been in a meeting. Maybe a few times, like it happened to me that actually the layout designer was in the meeting involved, and they just get bluntly pictures, not in the right order. Nobody
and they play along with it,
and they go with the creativity. But
of course.
And then you look at it. Sometimes sometimes you look at it as like, yeah, they added something to it, and sometimes you look at it, it's beautiful, it's not bad, but that's not what I meant as a photographer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's
So you advise,
really
you send the pictures, and you send with it a layout PDF. Just
or talk with your client. Well, and here I'm saying magazines because it's mainly magazines, because publications. Yeah, talk to
the brand, the fashion brand.
Exactly, to the publication. Let's say the publication or the brand about it beforehand. What is happening with the layout? Are we foreseeing something? Can I give a suggestion? Can I be around when it's done? Can I receive a copy, a draft?
Before it's published.
Before it's published, you know, just to make sure.
That's a nice thing, actually, also.
You know, and it's not about being arrogant or imposing or anything. It's just
making sure your message or your vision reach people,
and
right?
also making sure that your work is given at its best to the client or to the magazine who hired you to do it. As simple as this.
Nice.
And however, I have to say, not many photographers can do their own layouts. So it's not only the client, but I think photographers need to actually start training on that.
But actually, when you look at layouts, it doesn't. You don't have to be a professional graphic designer.
No, absolutely not.
You can have like a very basic idea about like if you can retouch, you can design on Photoshop.
You
Pretty
can.
much, if you can use the tools on Photoshop, you can design.
You can put it on PowerPoint. That's
Keynote
not the problem.
or
Keynote, PowerPoint, anything.
It's
not the medium. And what I'm saying is getting a sensibility of how does an image interact with a canvas. Simple as this. When do we put a full bleed? When don't we put a full bleed? When do we have a photo that is tiny in a blank white page? And how does it lift that photo? Does that photo need space to breathe, or do I need to put 10 photos in one single page because I want a collage sort of? So all this is again exposure. It's again literacy, visual literacy, as well as practice.
I think that's when a photographer become an image maker.
Exactly.
Like a whole
vision,
image maker.
And you get the vision from the beginning to the end.
So lately in your latest project, like did you have anything still kind of learning or seeing or kind of exposed to that you want to actually talk and tell people about, like?
Well, I mean, I'm an image maker. However, lately I've had this, you know, during this pandemic, I can't say shift of career, but in addition to my career, is I'm a creative director. I've become a creative director of a footwear brand in Egypt. It's called Z. And the creative direction did not only involve image making, but also product making. And so I designed a collection, and I just shot it yesterday. So in this case, what I did, you know, we're talking about image making, having the idea all the way from the conception all the way to the delivery. No, I had making the brand, designing the product,
production, transportation,
and campaign. Me design. Actually, when I was designing the product, I actually saw a campaign. I started with an image. That's how I started my mood board for the collection, was an image. So
you always kind of look where it's gonna be like, and then you work the steps backward to okay, what kind of material we're gonna use.
Yes, which is strange because I'm not hired to do a photo shoot. I'm hired to direct a brand creatively. And still, I'm an image maker. That's my vocation. And so that was an interesting experience of actually taking the whole process. So I'm the client, but I'm also the image maker. And that's why I decided not to photograph. So I could get someone I trust.
Although you have the vision, you know how it looks like.
And I know how to do it, and it was very, very tough at some points not to hold the camera yesterday and not to letting go. And I'm happy with the result. But something else happened yesterday is that a lot of things, it was very complicated. A lot of things did not go well.
As planned.
As planned at all. It was shot in the middle of the desert in Cairo, in August in Cairo. It was tough. Everything was going wrong. Garments, wardrobe, everything. The Jeep, just being stuck in the desert, and we were stuck without water. Everything went wrong. My team somehow noticed something different about me, because I was telling you, yes, I believe in
Tell
flexibility.
Tell me you were calm.
I was.
You
I was telling you flexibility, but I'm extremely strict
Yeah.
and on set. I was embracing things. Okay, I'm gonna let go. I can't do much.
How the wrong can be good.
You know, it just became so many things went
Nice.
wrong that either I cut the shoot, I say, okay, we're gonna cancel the shoot and we do it another day.
It's hectic.
Or I'm just gonna be zen. You know what? We have the day.
Yeah.
Everyone is here. We're big. We all worked hard.
You're already
just
tired.
Make the best out of
Yeah,
it. And I had that yesterday. I
Nice.
actually
That's a
surprised
new
myself.
thing. Yeah, that's a new
But
thing.
maybe-
That's a new thing.
But maybe I worked too hard for 3 months, so
Yeah.
I didn't have
You
any
didn't
more
have
fight
energy.
in me.
The sun got you so bad.
The sun got me bad,
Yeah.
but that was, I felt like, okay, this is a bit of maturity that I
Nice.
just gained.
Yeah.
So hopefully more maturity will be gained soon.
Nice. That's the progress.
Yeah.
That's what's really beautiful about fashion photography. I really want to thank you for
Thank you for
this
having
discussion.
me.
It's very beneficial for me, for everybody who's watching. I want to thank Sony Alpha Universe Middle East and Photopia Cairo, and see you in the next webinar.